Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Very interesting. I hope it works out that we'll be able to finish the Krishna Dharma Ramayana before I leave, because I'm not going to continue it once there's another plan once I leave. So I hope we'll finish. However, there's some questions, topics for discussion that I thought I would begin with this evening. Here's one. I think we covered it, but somebody asked, Snehabali asked, why was it that Ram, after the Sanjeevani herb was administered, they decided to attack Lanka at night? Isn't that against the codes of combat? So there's two answers, and they're quite similar. The codes of combat, it boils down to this: the codes of combat for a Kshatriya are between one Kshatriya and another Kshatriya. The codes of combat between a Kshatriya and a Rakshasa don't apply. That's the essence. An example of that is when Vishvamitra told Ram, kill Tataka now, because at night Rakshasas become more powerful, which implies the fight would have gone on at night. And it's not, Vishvamitra Muni wouldn't have advised something that's against the code Kshatriya conduct, nor would Ram engage in that which is against the codes of Kshatriya conduct. The second is not just when the Sanjeevani herb was administered, that's when it began fighting at night. The fighting at night was from the very beginning. From Valmiki Ramayana, Sarga 44, there's details about night fighting between the two. And we read in Krishna Dharma, this version, the very first evening reads, this is just reading what we read, as night fell, the Rakshasas felt their strength and enthusiasm increase. The fight continued into the night, with the combatants hardly able to recognize one another. Voices were heard to call out, "Are you a monkey or a Rakshasa?" Or shouts of, "Stand and fight," and "Why do you flee?" mixed with the cries of wounded and dying soldiers. The monkeys could see the golden armor of the Rakshasas glinting in the moonlight, and they sprang upon them, tearing them with their sharp teeth and pounding them with their fists. So the fight was from the first day. The codes of Kshatriya conduct apply to Kshatriya, not otherwise. Another was, what was the destination of the Rakshasas who were killed during the Battle of Lanka? Is everything all right? What's happening?
No, the video went off.
That's not good. If the video went off, then the audio went off. Everything went off. No, audio is on. Okay, great. So the answer, this is from a Sri Vaishnava scholar of Ramayana. He was consulted. And he said they went to Vira Svarga. Now, it doesn't say where Vira Svarga is, but Vira Svarga is a heavenly region reserved for warriors. So warriors that die in battle, just like it's described in Bhagavad Gita, they attain a heavenly realm. So what's that heavenly realm? It's Vira Svarga. What that is, again, what that is exactly, there is mention of that elsewhere in our Vaishnava literature. So that's where they went. But they specifically, they didn't attain Vaikuntha. And here's something further. This is from Krishna Sandarbha. You know what is Krishna Sandarbha. It's one of the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. And in Krishna Sandarbha, I'll read, but in essence he writes, even those killed by other forms of Vishnu Tattva forms, they don't attain Vaikuntha. Only those killed by Krishna attain the spiritual realm. Here's Krishna Sandarbha Anuchad 29. It's a real long section, but I'm only going to read part. Though Padma Purana says that these three, Nrsinga, Rama, and Krishna, have 6 qualities of Bhagavan in full, there's a Sanskrit term for it, it does not mean that they are equal. It indicates that among all avatars, they are the best. Generally, these 3 are considered the best of all. Among them, however, according to the order, they are successively superior. Nrsinga, Rama, and Krishna. Thus, Krishna is supreme. Paragraph. Maitreya asked why Hiranyakashipu was not liberated, whereas when he became Shishupal, he was liberated. Parashara explained that the greater power of Krishna is there in comparison to Nrsinga. Moreover, demons cannot attain liberation unless they meet Krishna. Other forms of the Lord do not give demons liberation. This is Krishna Sandarbha. And he quotes Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verses 19 and 20, and comments, in some scriptures it may be said that those who hate the Lord attain liberation by the power of thinking of him. But it is never said that all of the haters of the Lord are given liberation by avatars or their source, Vishnu. So it's not sufficient just become a hater of Vishnu and you get liberation. Thus, Parashara says that Krishna alone has additional powers for giving liberation to them. Previously noting that the cause of liberation is meeting the Lord, endowed with great power directly, and remembering the liberation of Putana and others by Krishna, while worrying that Kalanemi and others did not get liberation on being killed by other forms of the Lord, Parashara says that this is the most astonishing nature of Bhagavan known as Krishna. In prose, he says at the end, in Vishnu Purana, so this is not quoting verse by verse from Vishnu Purana, but it's a discussion in Vishnu Purana. Maitreya asking Parashara these questions. This is Parashara speaking. This Krishna, glorified and remembered, bestows the rarest kind of results to both devatas and demon, even by their connection through hatred. What to speak of giving results to those who are completely devoted? And it goes on. This is still Krishna Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami. According to the Bhagavatam, the 2 brothers Jai Vijay, had 3 births and should attain liberation from Krishna alone. Narada indicates this. It quotes the Bhagavatam 11.5.48. This is Narada's in Dwarka. Vasudeva approaches Narada. He asks him about liberation. Inimical kings, this is the verse spoken by Narada. Inimical kings, like Shishupal, Pondraka, and Shalva, while they were lying down, sitting, or engaging in other activities, enviously meditated upon the bodily movements of the Lord, his sporting pastimes, and his loving glances. Being thus always absorbed in Krishna, they achieved positions in the spiritual world. What then can be said of the benedictions offered to those who constantly fix their minds on Krishna in favorable, loving mood? They all attained, that's the verse, commentary, they all attained liberation by the great power of Krishna, since he is able to attract the mind of a person who thinks of him somehow or other. Again, other forms of the Lord do not have this nature. Thus, they do not liberate the demons. Very authoritative. Like he's saying it multiple times with different references. Vena, though a hater of Vishnu, did not attain liberation simply because he was absorbed in the Lord. Therefore it is said, Tasmat kenapi upayena manak krishne niveshayet. 7.1.31. This is again Narada speaking to Yudhisthira about Shishupal's deliverance. Manak krishne niveshayet. By some means or another, one should concentrate the mind on Krishna. Thus it should be concluded that Krishna has the most amazing Shakti amongst all the forms of the Lord. By refuting contrary statements, this is a Sanskrit rule that's applied in Vedanta Sutra that he's arguing should also be applied in the Puranas. Here's the rule, the Sanskrit rule. By refuting contrary statements, by making the statements favorable in meaning, the position of Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan is made stronger. And Vedanta Sutra as well, one sees that a statement in Scripture is established by refuting various contrary statements. One should have faith that this is the same principle applied here. That was Krishna Sandarbha, Anuched 29, and here's a little bit more in Anuched 35. Same idea. Because Lord Krishna grants liberation even to the enemies killed by him, he is unique among all the forms of the personality of Godhead. This is confirmed, etc., etc. Prayers by the personified Vedas confirms the same. So, that back to the question, what was the destination of the Rakshasas that were killed during that battle? The Vira Svarga, not liberation. There's 2 other topics which I think we can touch on. One was somebody wanted to know, maybe you remember, what was the departure pastime? You asked that question. So we're going to hear the departure pastime. So this is towards the very end of Uttara Kanda. Since the closing of Lord Ram's earthly pastimes was close at hand, time, capital T, time personified, came to Ayodhya one day in the guise of a wandering ascetic. After arriving at the palace gate, time, with a capital T, announced to Lakshmana, I'm a messenger from Lord Brahma. Since I have come on a very important mission, I desire to see Rama at once." Unquote. Thereafter, having respectfully ceded time, capital T, appearing in the form of a dazzling effulgent rishi, upon a golden throne with great respect, Ram inquired, "O Holy One, what is the nature of your visit? Is there some message you have come to deliver?" The messenger then replied, "O King, if you honor the wishes of Lord Brahma, then our meeting must be held in private. For his words are not meant for others. Indeed, let it be known for certain that anyone who overhears our conversation will soon meet with death." The plot thickens. "Oh, Ram, you must promise." And Ram always keeps his word, right? "That if anyone comes and interrupts our meeting, then you will unhesitatingly give up all connections with him." Lakshman interrupts. Ram replied, "Let it be so." To Lakshman he ordered, "Dismiss the doorman. I want you to personally guard the entrance, for this meeting must be in strict privacy." Thereafter, when the two were alone, Death in the form of a messenger said, "In a previous birth I was the son of Lord Brahma. Now I am appearing as all-devouring eternal time, capital T. O King, the universal grandsire," that's Brahma, "speaks unto you the following words: O Lord Ram, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my obeisances unto you after the dissolution of the universe. In the form of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, you sleep in the waters of devastation. Then, when there is need of recreating the universe as it was before, I, Lord Brahma, take birth from the effulgent lotus that grows from your navel. After my birth, I was interested with the creation of the three worlds. In turn, I requested you to assume the form of Kshirodakshai Vishnu to become the maintainer of the universe. Ever since that time, you have appeared in many transcendental forms whenever there is a need to relieve the burden of the world. Now, you have appeared to kill Ravana and rule the earth for 11,000 years. O Lord, since this allotted time is now concluded, you need no longer remain within this material world. If you so desire, you may at once ascend to heaven. To heaven, to resume your rule over the demigods. Oh, all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the source of my strength and my very existence. Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you." After listening to Kala, Rama smiled and replied, "You have spoken truthfully. May there be all good fortune for you. You may now go and tell Lord Brahma that because I have fulfilled the purpose of the demigods, I will very soon return to my own transcendental abode." However, as Rama and the messenger were conversing, it happened that Durvasa Muni arrived at the royal palace. When Lakshmana meant to receive him, the rishi insisted, "I am here on most urgent business, and I must see Lord Ram at once." The plot has gotten really thick now. Lakshmana replied, "Rama has given me strict orders that he cannot be interrupted under any circumstance. O foremost of rishis, please be patient and wait for a short while." At this, Durvasa Muni lost his temper. With fiery eyes, he screamed, "Go and announce my presence at once. If you are so foolish to disobey me, then I shall curse Rama, Bharata, yourself, the entire Ikshvaku dynasty, and the entire Koshala kingdom. Hurry!" for my patience wears thin. Lakshman knew that to interrupt Ram's conversation with Kala would soon bring about his own death. However, thinking of Durvasa's curse, he concluded, it is better that I suffer alone rather than cause everyone's ruination. Lakshman then entered the room. Being informed of Durvasa's arrival, Ram took leave of Kala and hurriedly went out to meet the Rishi. Sounds like part of the plan, right? As he, this is Ram, stood before Durvasa Muni with folded hands, Ram inquired, "O foremost of ascetic brahmanas, what can I do to please you?" Durvasa replied, "O righteous king, I have just now completed a 1,000-year fast. What can you get me to eat?" Thereafter Ram provided Durvasa with a sumptuous feast. Thus the Rishi became highly gratified. After Durvasa's departure, however, Ram remembered the promise he made to Kala. Thus a horrible grief overtook him. Fearing the loss of his most intimate associate, Ram stood as though deprived of reason, his head bowed in dejection. Lakshmana then approached his aggrieved brother and cheerfully said, "O Rama, do not lament for that which is inevitable, under the control of supreme destiny. Duty must be carried out without attachment or aversion. Therefore keep your promise and banish me without hesitation." Ram summoned his ministers, and after describing all that happened, he asked for their advice. Finally, after a long silence, Vashishta said, "My dear Rama, by dint of my ascetic prowess, I could foresee all this happening to you. Now, you must keep your promise, otherwise your lifelong adherence to righteousness will be blighted. With the decay of religious principles, the world gradually comes to perish. Therefore, adhere to truthfulness and banish Lakshmana." Ram appeared to think deeply over the matter. Then he announced to the assembly, "Adhering to righteousness, I hereby order the banishment of Lakshmana from Ayodhya." The ministers all applauded Ram's decision, and thereafter Lakshmana went to the banks of the river Sarayu and absorbed his mind in the practice of mystic yoga. Then, when the time became ripe, King Indra suddenly appeared there, riding a celestial chariot. Thus, in his self-same transcendental body, Lakshmana ascended to heaven. Amidst the singing of Gandharvas, the dancing of Apsaras, and showers of fragrant flowers. But it's not over yet. Ram's still there. After Lakshmana's disappearance, Ram decided to install Bharata upon the royal throne so that he could be free to follow the son of Sumitra's path. However, Bharata refused to occupy the throne, for he preferred to accompany Rama to the forest rather than enjoying the kingdom without him. Rama then divided the kingdom between his sons, giving Kusha the northern part of Koshala and Lava the southern part. After the coronation, Ram embraced his twin sons and then presented them with vast amounts of gold jewels, thousands of chariots, and countless horses and elephants. When the citizens heard of Ram's intention to retire to the forest, guess what? They became determined to follow him, wherever he might go. Indeed, their grief due to the impending separation was unbearable. Shatrughna was also intent on following Ram, and thus, when the Lord finally came out of the city, there was a great procession following him. Indeed, because of their love and devotion, every living entity followed Ram to the forest, so that not even an animal could be seen in Ayodhya. Mice or rats or something. When Ram silently walked along, everyone could see that he was exhibiting a mood of complete detachment and indifference, as if preparing to give up this world. All of Ram's potencies appeared in personified form to accompany him on this momentous occasion. Shri walked on Ram's right side, and Bhumi on his left side. Shakti walked in front, and innumerable other energies followed Ram, including Omkar, Gayatri, and the Vedas. Next, Shatrughna and their families followed Bharata, then the Brahmanas who attended the sacrificial fire. Behind the Brahmanas walked all the citizens according to their positions. Following these came all the animals. It's going to be a ghost town. Arriving at the banks of River Sarayu, Ram paused. At that time, Lord Brahma and the demigods appeared overhead in their celestial chariots. The sky was thus lit up with a transcendental radiance, and gentle, sweet-smelling breezes began to blow. The Gandharvas and Apsaras sang and danced on that occasion, and the demigods showered the most fragrant of celestial flowers. 2 paragraphs. Thereafter, as Lord Rama proceeded to enter the water, Lord Brahma offered his prayers as follows, quote, O Lord of Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are now concluding your earthly pastimes and are preparing to return to your transcendental abode beyond this material world. You are the eternal Lord Vishnu, and although you appear in various incarnations, your body is unchanging and original. It is you alone who is the cause of all the causes and the support of all existence. Everything is thus part and parcel of you, for you are the supreme absolute truth, the source of all emanation. O Lord, you have so kindly appeared to remove the burden of the earth. Thus let us again offer our respectful obeisances unto you, again and again. Final. Followed by Bharata and Shatrughna, Lord Ram thus returned to his eternal abode in the spiritual sky. Indeed, not only the sons of Dasrath, but all of their followers attained to the Vaikuntha planet, where Lord Rama eternally resides. Except for one, Hanuman. And one more, and we'll go if there's time. The Palastuti, that was another question. The benedictions for those who hear and recite. Here is from the Bhagavatam. And then we'll go to Valmiki Ramayana. In the Bhagavatam 9:11-23, O King Parikshit, anyone who orally receives the narrations concerning the characteristics of Lord Ramachandra's pastimes will ultimately be freed from the disease of envy and thus be liberated from the bondage of fruitive activities. And from Valmiki Ramayana, there's a section in Balakanda, Sarga 1. Whoever reads this history of Rama, which is purifying, destructive of sin, holy, and the essence of the Vedas, is freed from all sins. A man who reads this Ramayana story, which leads to long life, will after death rejoice in heaven together with his sons, grandsons, and attendants. To have a big party in heaven. A Brahmana who reads it becomes eloquent. A Kshatriya becomes the lord of the earth. A Vaishya acquires profit from his goods, and even a lowly Shudra achieves greatness. Now there's sometimes this question of why are these things presented in Scripture? And the answer is because some people are attracted to those things. There's beyond those things, but those people are attracted to those things. That's why they're there. From Yuddhakanda, he who listens every day to this oldest epic composed by the sage Valmiki, this is right from Valmiki Ramayana, which is calculated to bestow religious merit, renown, and longevity, and which lends support to the Vedas, is completely freed of sin. Kings will overcome their enemies and conquer the earth. Men will overcome all difficulties, and women will be blessed with excellent sons and grandsons. Even as Kaushalya, the mother has Ram as her living son, or as Sumitra has Lakshman, or as Kaikeyi has Bharata, the women likewise can become mothers of living sons, endowed with children as well as grandchildren, and thus become happy forever. Wait a minute. Those listening to this epic will receive from Sri Ram all the boons they desire. Ram gets forever pleased with him who listens to or reads Ramayana daily. He is indeed the eternal Vishnu. Through a hearing of this work, all the gods and forefathers are satisfied. One who keeps a copy in his house will find his obstacles coming to an end. A man offering worship to and reading this historical work is completely rid of all sins and attains a long life. All the gods are thus pleased, and one's ancestors are gratified forever. Those transcribing this work with devotion are guaranteed residence in heaven, while those hearing it will secure the growth of their family and wealth, supreme happiness, and the accomplishment of all their objects on earth. And here from Uttarakhanda. The gods, Gandharvas, Siddhas, and Rishis always listen with great pleasure to the Ramayana in heaven. Probably has more verses. This legend is the bestower of longevity, the enhancer of fortune, and the dispeller of sins. In fact, there's two places in Gopi Pranadhana's commentary on Brihat Bhagavatamrita, when it speaks about Ram's activities. There he writes that Madhvacharya says the eternal Ramayana is 1 billion verses long. The version that's known in the heavenly region is 1 million verses long. And that 1 million verses long version is the version that Brahma taught to Narada, and only a summary was taught by Narada to Valmiki. And it's eternal. It's not, it's history, it's itihasa, but it's eternal. It's not like Once Upon a Time, or, King Charles or something like that. King something or other. And there's a history. A man reading even a quarter of it is freed from all sins. Indeed, even if one sins daily, he is released from the accidents if he recites just one verse of the Ramayana. A man gets the results of 1,000 Ashwamedha sacrifices and 10,000 Vijpaya sacrifices merely by hearing this great work. He has visited all the holy shrines and bathed in all the sacred rivers. One who listens to the story of Sri Ram with full reverence roots out all sins and goes to the world of Vishnu. The Ramayana is unsurpassed form of Gayatri. Like we say that the Bhagavatam is a commentary on Gayatri because the scripture says it. Here it is in Valmiki Ramayana. The Ramayana is a commentary on Gayatri. By hearing it with devotion, one will undoubtedly achieve liberation. Along with many generations of ancestors, the exploits of Sri Ram are the bestower of all four of life's objects, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Hearing even one line of this work with full devotion guarantees one's attainment of the world of Brahma. And then Palastuti, I was checking and I came across one of the Ramayana translations that I have in my computer, a digital version. Whoever was the translator, doesn't say who the translator was, but they have their own like little Palastuti at the end. This epic should only be recited by those who have implicit faith in the Supreme Lord, for it is not different from Lord Vishnu himself. Hearing even a single verse has the potency to eradicate all sins committed by a person that day. Therefore, those who seek liberation from the cycle of repeated birth and death always relish this great transcendental literature. The recitation of the Ramayana grants one all the fruits of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Beyond that, it helps one to advance towards life's ultimate goal, the development of love of Godhead. This apparently is a Hare Krishna devotee that did this. May the readers of this book thus become blessed and inspired in Krishna consciousness. It's definitely a Hare Krishna devotee. May the transcendental forms of Lord Rama and Sita forever remain situated within their hearts. So that was a little presentation on Palastuti. So this is what happens. You ask questions, you get a little research and some answers. And here's a further detail. How many times did Hanuman go get a mountaintop? In the end, he crossed the ocean 3 times. I'll read. He crossed the ocean 3. First is to get Sita, to confirm that Sita's there and so forth. The second was after Indrajit fired weapons at both Ram and Lakshman, using the language, they were laid low. And everyone was panicked. And Hanuman went to Jambavan, who spoke in a very soft voice. There's a particular mountain, so we read this, in the Himalayas, and it has celestial herbs, 4 in number. These are the names. Go bring the herbs, and they'll be revived. So he goes. It doesn't give the name of the mountain. It says that mountain is in between this one and that one. Forget this one and that one's names. I don't have it here. Huh? Rishabh Hill is one, and there's something else, another something. Mount Everest? Whatever the other one is. But later when he goes to, so he brings back, it says in that case, the herbs hid themselves. So since he couldn't find the herbs, he brought the mountain. At least the top of the mountain. And then later the herbs were used for other purposes again and again. And then the second time is the javelin weapon. In some places it's called Shakti Shela. In one of the translations for the word Shela is a javelin. It's the mystic javelin that Mayadanava had made, and it was gifted to Ravan. So Ravan fired the mystic lance, Mayadanava's lance, and hit the chest of Lakshman. And Ram was greatly disturbed and ready to give up and stuff like that. And the doctor, Shushena is his name, right? Shushena said, go get some more herbs. So second time, it gives the name Mahodaya Hill, and it's the one that's between this mountain and that mountain. And then he could see the herbs. He couldn't recognize which herbs. Since he couldn't recognize which herb, but he knew it's the right mountain, so he took another piece of the mountain. And so it's twice. And then another detail that commentators say, although he went 3 times, the one that gets most attention is rescuing Sita. And this has to do with the Sri Vaishnava. Many of the Sri Vaishnavas have this view that Govindaraj particularly expresses, that Hanuman is performing the function of Guru, and Sita is taking the part of a living entity that has strayed from being entirely focused on the personality of Godhead, from the point of her wanting the deer, not because Ram wanted the deer, but she wanted to enjoy an object. In any case. Okay, so, gosh, it's 20 minutes after 7. Let's just read a little bit, because Ravana, we can't just neglect Ravana, he's too important, right? Chapter 12, this is from Krishna Dharma's version. The terrified Rakshasa ran to Ravana and informed him of Indrajit's fall. Quote, having closed with a greater hero, your powerful son has met his end, they reported. The highly glorious Indrajit, after gratifying Lakshmana with innumerable arrows, has gone to the next world. We know what that next world was. Vira Swarga. Ravana looked at his ministers for some moments in a state of utter dismay. He then fell to the ground in a swoon and remained unconscious for some time. Now, I don't know if that's in Valmiki Ramayana, but that's here. When he recovered, he fell back onto his throne and sat with a downcast face, lamenting loudly, "Oh, my son, where have you gone? You conquered. How then have you been overpowered by Lakshman? When angered, you were capable of terrorizing even death himself. Your arrows could smash down the peaks of Mount Mandara. Time is truly all-powerful, for today you have been thrown down by that unconquerable force, even as you stood on the battlefield, weapons in hand. Ravana was inconsolable. He praised his dead son in many ways. Surely, Indrajit had now reached the regions reserved for heroes. There it goes, Vira Swarga. Now that he was dead, the gods, rishis, and guardians of the worlds would rejoice, their thorn being removed. Thinking of Mandodari, Ravana cried out in anger, in agony, "Your mother, the blessed queen, will surely lose her life today. Soon I will hear the cries of the Rakshasa women as they toss about on the ground. What perverse destiny has brought about your end before mine? Oh, my dear Indrajit, how could you leave me here while Ram and Lakshman still live?" Seized by unbearable grief, the demon king fell from his throne and rolled about on the golden floor of his palace. A violent anger then took possession of him, and he breathed heavily. Jumping to his feet, he knitted his brows and roared furiously. Flames blazed forth from his wide open mouths. He looked like time personified, about to consume all the worlds. The demon thought only of revenge. His eyes, red by nature, glowed, brilliant red, with anger. Tears fell from them like drops of molten metal. He ground his teeth, making a sound like two mountains being rubbed together. Taking up his long, razor-edged sword, which shone like the bright blue sky, he held it aloft and thundered in fury, pleasing the self-born creator of all the worlds. By righteous austerities, I receive from him an infallible boon. Not even the gods and demons combined can kill me in battle. What then of a couple of humans? Bring my bow. Fetch my impenetrable armor. Today I shall march out and make short work of Ram and his entire army. We're used to chivalrous words in this kanda. Looking as if he might destroy the entire universe itself, Ravana glared all around him. His ears shrank back in fear, uttering plaintive sounds. The king said to them, "My dear son played a hoax upon Ram by killing an illusory Sita. That hoax shall now become reality. I shall finish Sita, who is dear to Ram." Bent on his evil purpose, Ravana immediately rushed out of his palace toward the Ashok Grove. Seeing the infuriated demon coming out of his palace with upraised sword, the other Rakshasas felt heartened. Surely now the war would soon be ended. Ravana had overcome the four guardians of the world. He would certainly have no problem with an army of monkeys and bears. The demon stormed toward his gardens, but as he moved swiftly along the pathways, his ministers ran up to him. They stood before him, trying to dissuade him from his intention of killing Sita. Already a terrible carnage among the Rakshasas had been wrought simply due to her being kidnapped. What might happen if Ravana actually killed her? Ravana would not be swayed. He strode into the gardens. Sita saw him from a distance and began to tremble. Upon seeing his furious disposition and uplifted sword, she could understand that he intended to kill her. The princess wondered about her husband. Had he been slain? Why was Ravana so bold? If only she had gone with Hanuman! Why had she decided to stay in Lanka, tormented by this cruel Rakshasa? This was all the fault of the cruel Mantara. Soon that wicked maid would rejoice with her purpose fulfilled. If not already dead, then Ram would certainly not survive long when he heard of his beloved wife's death. Should we end there? No, we got to keep going. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode. As Ravana came close to Sita, a minister named Suparshva got before him, saying, "How are you contemplating such a mean and pointless act, O 10-headed monarch? No good can ever come from killing a woman, for it is condemned by everyone. This lady should be protected. You should vent your own wrath on Ram and Lakshman, your actual enemies. If you kill them, this princess will then be yours to enjoy." Ravana considered this advice. Perhaps Suparshva was right. It would be foolish to needlessly lose the princess now after so much effort to retain her. And Rama might yet be overcome. There was no need to kill Sita now. Better to kill Ram. Then she would surely submit to him. Overcome by anger and lust, as well as a burning grief, the demon turned away from Sita and made his way to his council chamber. Nice going, Suparshva. Surrounded by his ministers, he entered the great hall. Afflicted by agony, he sank onto his gem-encrusted throne and sat there snorting like a furious lion. With folded hands, he addressed the assembly. "I now depend fully on all of you. The time to destroy our arrogant enemy has come. Tomorrow, I shall march out to kill Ram. First, all of you should go out, weapons held high, and weaken the human prince and his army. I shall soon follow you." That's the game plan. The Rakshasas roared in joy. They rose up in a body and rushed out of the hall, mounting horses, chariots, elephants, and other carriers. They stormed out of the city. They immediately hurled a massive shower of axes, maces, spears, darts, and iron clubs upon the monkeys, who replied with trees and rocks. The two armies again fell upon one another with tremendous clamor. One more paragraph. Ram decided it was time he demonstrated his own insurmountable prowess. He immediately penetrated deep into the ranks of the Rakshasas. He moved like a whirlwind, leaving a trail of slaughtered demons in his wake. The Rakshasas could hardly look at him. No one could see his movements as he took out arrows from his inexhaustible quiver and sent them in all directions. By releasing the weapons of the Gandharvas, Ram made himself appear in a multitude of forms. To the confused Rakshasas, he seemed to be everywhere at once. They saw the curved golden ends of his bow whirling like a firebrand and seeming to completely surround them. His arrows flew from all directions simultaneously. They sliced the Rakshasas to pieces. In less than 2 hours, Ram had exterminated 200,000 Rakshasas. How long did it take for the 14,000? 1 hour? 1 hour? This is 200,000 in 2 hours. Along with 18,000 elephants and 14,000 horses. That's a lot of arrows in 1 hour. I think that's a good place to end. Sita's at least safe for now. Ravana's going to come out the gate tomorrow. And let's see if there's some discussion. Because if you have questions, it's going to take some time tomorrow to cover the answers to those questions. Anybody have some topics you'd like to discuss on this?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. Maharaj, first question is, Falstuti is one thing which describes that people can get that benefit, they will reach Swarga, they can enjoy this and that. So that part is because, as you mentioned, people have that sort of desires and inclination, so scripture define in that way. But for Lord Ramachandra or Lakshmana themselves to go to heaven, right? It describes they went to heaven. That Lakshmana went with Indra.
No, it said they went back to his eternal abode.
In between, it was describing that
in
Indra
the
arrived there.
Palastuti, it speaks like that, but the destination was their eternal abode in the Vaikuntha realm. So that's a contradiction. Did he go to this or that? Why are they saying he went to that if he went to this?
Right. Same thing is regarding Pandavas also. In Mahabharata, it describes they went to heaven. And Bhagavatam described they went to the spiritual abode, Vaikuntha. So there is a little contradiction there.
Well, that's between Mahabharata that speaks mainly about virtue as opposed to the Bhagavatam that speaks of transcendence. That's my understanding of that distinction between what Mahabharata says and what the Bhagavatam says. Virtuous people go there, transcendental people go there. So in the Palastuti, it's speaking mostly about the fruits of piety. And in the conclusion, it states we went back to his eternal abode in the Vaikuntha realm.
Right. And is there some sort of description like that also? Because as a liberated soul, move upward for the spiritual world. So there is a description of how the mystic travels, the Shishumara Marg and all. On the way, there are different destinations.
Yes.
So maybe they stop there to receive some honor from the demigods and.
Yes. There's some section I was just reading, maybe it's going to be for tomorrow. That is, some personalities achieve these higher abodes, and then from there they go to the transcendental realm. Now, I can't remember, I don't want to misrepresent the details, but something like that. Not everyone does that, but some do that. Right. They don't go directly, they make a pit stop on the way. Then say Haribol to everybody and off they go.
Because maybe the Indra and other demigods, they want to welcome them and they want to worship them.
Yes, like that. Exactly. That's what's written. That's not elaborately described, the festival they have. But they want to do like that. And so they're given the opportunity. And it's a kind of service to inspire the demigods to don't stay just in heaven, go to the spiritual realm. So they do that little Sankirtan.
Thank you, Maharaj. Another question is, somewhere I have read or heard about the description of Ahiravan in the lower regions, that there is another person, Ahiravan. Ravan approaches Ahiravan for help during the war, and that Ahiravan somehow kidnaps Hanuman and binds him. So some sort of description is there. I don't know how accurate is that or where exactly that is described. Have you come across?
No, I have not. But again, I'm not like you. Unlike you, I'm not a Ramayana scholar. Well, compared to whatever you are, I'm not. But I'm learning as I'm going along, and there are 3 principal persons who I reach out to, 4 that are Ramayana scholar, 5 that, depending upon what the topic is, they're familiar with. One of them is exclusively familiar with Valmiki Ramayana. Another is very much connected to Sri Vaishnava teachers of Ramayana. And another is like a really super researcher that knows like 16 different Ramayanas and has copies of them and cross-references them from time to time. And then another just like, that goes deeply into the topics. And so depending on what the topic is, I go, but I don't know all these Ati Ravana and in which Ramayana is it in, and
yeah, I was also not sure. That's why I never quoted when I spoke on.
Well, I'll tell you what. Rasamrita is going to send me a little text message and remind me to find out which Ramayana or Ramayanas is their reference from Ati Ravana. Adi. Adi. A-D-I. Ahi. A-H-I. Ahi Ravana. Okay, thank you. Now there's 2 references that I'm aware of, in which Ramayanas say it, I don't know, but Ravana visiting Bali.
Yeah, that is it.
Well, there's more than one version of his visit to Bali. And one version is really funny. Bali insults him and says, don't you know what you're doing? Tell you what, you like gold, right? Here's a gold mountain. You can take it with you. He tries to lift it. He can't lift it. And he says, earring of Hiranyakashipu. And you can't lift it. And that's his earring. And the same Lord Vishnu killed him. What's going to happen to you? You're really foolish.
That incident was after Hanuman burnt Lanka and Ravana went for help. So
yes.
He presented that gold,
Yes.
that you can fix your Lanka
Yes.
again with that gold.
Then there's another time when he was like conquering everywhere in all directions, and he went to Bali, and Lord Vamana gave him a boot, so he couldn't enter. Then then there's another one. He let him in, because you're such a small fry. Anyway, so there's different versions of different Ramayanas and at different times. But Ahi Ramayana, I'll find out. There's probably a whole section. I'll get not just Ahi Ramayana, Ahi Ravana, but the others. And what was the sequence was after Hanuman left?
During the war.
During the war he went.
Ravana goes for asking for help.
So do you have, the duration of the war was another question. And one of the sources, the one that hears from Sri Vaishnava, speakers, said he heard 7 days and 7 nights.
Somewhere it discussed 84 days, right?
Yeah, 87.
7 days.
And there was a 15-day break. And then there's another acharya that said it was some other number. And it was, so a devotee's going to get back to me about that one. It's, an essay that he read based upon, the moon passing through which nakshatra is when it started, and the moon passing through another nakshatra is when it ended. so that you can count the number of days that it lasted and when it actually began and when it actually ended. So this, you heard me say this, right? But so the scholar said the problem is because of the algorithm of the changes of the movements of the planets, because Ram appeared in the 24th Yuga cycle of Vaivasvata Manu, and Krishna appeared in the 28th Yuga cycle of Vaivasvata Manu. So how much difference is there now? So he wanted to check it out. I don't know what algorithm he was going to use to check it out. But anyway. So I'll get, when I have that research done, because I've been keeping him busy with other things.
Sure.
Learning a lot as I'm going along. So you have something further? No. Anything else in the room here? You're all neighbors, right? You live close by somewhere.
Maharaj, any mention about what happens to Sita after she goes to Valmiki's ashram, after she was banished?
She enters into the earth. She came from the earth and she entered into the earth.
And she goes back.
Well, of course.
That's-
She's eternal consort.
Maharaj, also from the morning class today, like you were mentioning, like our Prahlad Maharaj came from Vaikunta, like implying there are multiple Prahlad Maharajas.
The implication is, one more time, because we discussed it twice this morning, there are different appearances, there are different days of Brahma, and there are different appearances of Lord Nrsingadev during those different days of Brahma, and there are different Prahlads that are his associate during those different days of Brahma when he appears. And some, they go by the name Prahlad. It's not, whether it's the same jiva or not the same jiva, doesn't seem to be the same jiva, but someone named Prahlad. And he has this background, that background. Because the question came, who was Prahlad in his previous life? So Canto 7, Chapter 10, verse number 3, when you get back to your house, you can look it up. Very clearly, he's a Nityasiddha from Vaikuntha, teaching. That's his previous life. And then there's other references that you also heard from the Shringa Purana and other places. He's not a Vaikuntha resident come to teach, he's someone else. So it's not always the same. So there are different Prahlads, different living entities with the name Prahlad, who are taking part in Lord Nrsingadev's pastime.
And does that apply to other devotees of the Lord like Arjuna or?
No. In the case of Arjuna, this is what Prabhupada said, and it's confirmed in Brihat Bhagavatamrita by Narada Muni and by Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha, that Arjuna expands. It's one Arjuna. But you know this story, right? Giriraj Maharaj, in morning walk in Juhu, asked Prabhupada, Krishna's pastimes are eternal, right? And so somewhere Krishna's appearing, and somewhere his pastimes are eternally going on. So does this mean that Arjuna is in all of these places? Is Arjuna expanding? And Prabhupada's answer was yes. This is not verbatim, but it's confirmed by Narada in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. For the purposes of serving the Lord, the devotees of the Lord can expand themselves or be expanded by the Lord to serve him in multiple ways So that's the case with Arjuna, and it's apparently not the case with Prahlad.
Regarding Arjuna, the Nar Narayan, they are also described as
Yes.
in one sense Krishna and Arjuna.
Yes.
The Nar
Yes.
Narayan.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It starts out pretty simple, and then it gets a little complicated. But, it's not complicated for Krishna because he's the controller. He has multi ways of doing what he does.
So, Maharaj, my question is how much does it matter the pronunciation of a word Ram and Rama? As being born in North India, we are used to say Ram, not Rama. But I heard devotees stressing upon saying it Rama, not Ram.
It's important, but I've been reading. I've purposely been saying Ram because everyone's used to hearing Ram.
I think yesterday itself we heard one devotee who was giving a boys' youth class, and he asked everybody to chant the Maha Mantra, and somebody was chanting Ram Ram Hare Hare, and in that he corrected, not Ram, say Rama.
Well, and we hear there's 16 syllables. So, or 16 named with 32 syllables. So, technically he's right. But how important is it? Well, he knows who you're calling. Right? So but we want to say somebody's name properly. But I'm not from India, but I know this much. And in Hindi, the final vowel is left off. But we don't. Prabhupada didn't do that. So is his name Ram or Rama? His name is Rama. But people say Ram. So I've been reading it Ram. I don't know if you noticed it, but today I was saying Rama. It should be his full name. Anything else? We have online. Here we go.
This is from Ankit Agarwal. He says, thank you for the wonderful class. During the class you mentioned Ramayana as a narration on Gayatri and Bhagavatam. Can you please give some more insight on this?
No. But I know why scholars can do that. The Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, they very elaborately take the words of Gayatri Mantra. I recently saw something. Sri Vaishnava Acharyas take the words of each of the words of Gayatri Mantra and say which khanda explains or expands each word. It's a very subtle, poetic exercise. I'll say it again for the person that's asking this question. According to Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, each of the words of Gayatri Mantra are expanded in different khandas. Specific khanda expands on this and that and the other word of the Gayatri Mantra. I'm not familiar with that. I saw it. I didn't ingest it, so I can't say it back. But if they want, if this person's really curious, they can go do the research themselves. I'm not going to ask my researchers to go look it up for them and send it to them, because it's kind of abstract and not like germane to making advancement in Krishna consciousness. It's a curiosity item that which just falls into that category. As far as Gayatri, there's essays by our acharyas that explain that also in some detail, but the principle is some people take Gayatri to be worship of the impersonal Brahman. The impersonalists do that. Sun god worshippers think it's worship of the sun god. Prabhupada even comments in places it's worship of the sun god. But in the ultimate sense, it's worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how is that? Well, it's explained. Jiva Goswami has written some nice essays on that topic. So now the person's asking me, can I expand on that? If you're interested, find Jiva Goswami's essays on how Gayatri Mantra is, how the Srimad Bhagavatam is an expansion on the meaning of Gayatri Mantra. Do the research, you can find it. And if you're really curious, you can get information.
This is from Snehavali Mataji, Devidasi. She says, this is more of a comment. Most of the Phalashruti indicate material benefits
Yes.
as a result of reading Ramayana.
Yes.
I was surprised on the benefit that even if one commits sins daily, they will be relieved from their sins.
Yes.
This is Namaparad according to our teachings.
That's correct.
With Namaparad, one doesn't achieve love of Godhead.
That's correct.
So, this is from Sanchari Devidasi. In regards to the conversation on who Prahlad Maharaj was in his past life, and apologies if I misunderstood the following, but per your comment that there are various Prahlads.
Yes.
2 questions. Do the pastime for the most part happen the same way with each one?
No.
And is the Prahlad Maharaj that appeared in this cycle the same as the one who appeared as a Madhva Sampradaya Saint Raghavendra Swami?
I don't know anything about Raghavendra Swami as an appearance of Prahlad Maharaj. I have no idea. But if you're Sanchari, I can send you the PDF that I read from this morning and supplied to the person who asked it yesterday from the Columbus ISKCON Center. You can send to her. Harish will send you that PDF. And if anybody else is interested, contact Harish. He'll send you the PDF. The explanation, when you hear the explanation, it's not the same. According to Nrsimha Purana, after Hiranyakashipu is killed by Lord Nrsimhadev, and Prahlad offers prayers, in the Nrsimha Purana he then asks him, Prahlad asked Lord Nrsimhadev, how did I become so fortunate to be in your service like this? And he gives a very elaborate answer. In a previous life, you had a father and mother, Vasu Sharma, if I remember correctly. It was his father's name, and something with an S was his mother's name, who was as virtuous as her husband. And they lived in a certain place. Gives the name of the place. They had 5 children. You were the eldest of the 5 sons, and the other 4 sons were very exalted, and you were very corrupted. You became corrupted by association with a prostitute. And in the course of your life, you had a quarrel with the prostitute, and it was on Nrsimha Chaturdasi day. So you were upset and she was upset, and you observed a complete fast on the Shringa Chaturdasi day. And for that one thing, you took birth. You became my devotee. You became eligible for Narada's association and became my devotee. Because you did all those bad things, you took birth as the son of Hiranyakashipu. And the lady, she became an apsara, enjoyed celestial pleasures. But then came to the spiritual realm. She made a pit stop and enjoyed for a while. Now it doesn't say how bhakti entered her life. Not just you became freed from sin by observing the Shringa Chaturdasi, but it takes more than that. So her bhakti life doesn't say how. And then in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Gopi Pranadana makes reference to another Brihan, the Shringa Purana, says something quite similar but not the same. That the husband and wife, he was a Brahmana that became contaminated by a prostitute. They merged into Brahman at the end of their life, and after merging into Brahman, he took birth as Prahlad. Quite different, Sanchari. So it's not the same. Vaikunthavasi, and etc., etc. So there's a little bit of theme, but there's certainly some difference in these narrations. And there's probably more, because the story of Prahlad is narrated in 7 or 8 different Puranas, and Hari Bhaktivilas mentions it also. So, but this PDF has the whole thing. If you can just send it out to everybody, and that's fine. Okay.
Did Prahlad Maharaj participate in Chaitanya Leela also? Was he any character in Chaitanya Leela?
Of course. According to Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's 2 persons who are mentioned. One of those persons that's mentioned is Vasudev Dutt. You're an incarnation of Prahlad Maharaj. And in some places, Haridas Thakur is a combination of Brahma and Haridas Thakur.
Generally we hear Haridas Thakur as incarnation of Brahma.
Yes, we do hear that. And sometimes we hear he's a combination of the two. We hear that from Bhakti Vinod Thakur, but you read in Gaura Gunadesh Dipika and you'll find something that's a little further. Next.
This is from Forum Mataji.
From?
Forum Shah.
Okay.
And she's asking, during the war pastime of Ramayana, I was unable to connect or focus on them as they do not hold much interest for me. So what is the correct mood for me to listen to these kind of pastimes?
I have a problem too. But the connection, to maintain connection, it's the Supreme Lord giving protection. We think of Lord Nrsingadev giving protection, but that was pretty wild also. Really intense. And not just Ravan, his thousands and thousands of buddies. I mean, not Ravan, but Hiranyakashipu. His soldiers and generals and everybody, they got ripped to smithereens too. The Lord just manifested more arms. So it's the protection. That's how you can make some connection. It's the Lord giving protection. When the devotee is harassed, the Lord gives protection to such devotees. Okay? That's it? One more? You have something.
On the other side, I kind of enjoy these pastimes of battle scenes as I'm hearing from you. So is that okay?
You can enjoy. I'm trying to make it like a dramatic reading. It's okay, yeah. Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. And you know, and I've experienced boys universally like these pastimes. I mean, I haven't met a boy that doesn't like the battle pastimes. There may be some, but do you like the battle pastimes? Yeah. You're quite normal. I think there are probably some girls that like them too. So it may have something to do with Kshatriya spirit. Okay, so we're finished for this evening. You have one question, okay.
Jai Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the very inspiring class.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you, Maharaj. I have one question, maybe you answered it before. Like Mother Sita is the internal potency of Lord Ram.
Yes.
So these pastimes, like she's kidnapped Ravana and all Rama and all these pastime. So all these are for teaching purpose for us?
They're which?
They are the teaching, some principle to teach us these pastimes are conducted?
Well, there's many things. There's the internal is rasa. Now, the rasa doesn't look nice, but it's increasing dependency upon, amplifying the emotions connected to for them. They're experiencing joy when it looks like suffering. But it's and for us, it's you identify with Sita and with Ram. Are those transcendental emotions also become stirred in us? You know, and one of the main lessons, from the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, is don't even contemplate being a separate enjoyer, because you're going to have a problem. And it can be a really bad problem. It keeps going on and on and on and on because of that. That's the Sri Vaishnava's perspective. Sita is the internal potency, but she takes the position of one who is a living entity and wanting to enjoy separately. That's the deer. And from that point, it's like misery. And then Guru Hanuman has to go recover the wayward soul that strayed away and got into trouble, harassed by Ravan. And it's not easy to rescue a soul that's been captured by Ravan, you know, tempting and so forth, intimidating. Like Prahlad, he was also intimidated terribly, not only by his father, but by his teachers. So, but we can be protected. That's some of the lessons. But if you really like, it depends on what you like. But if you really like, then I've started to develop some appreciation for how Govindaraj has written. Govindaraj wrote in Tamil. And so to prepare for these yatras of going to Kishkinda and Panchavati and all that, Nasik, some devotees that are Tamil English speaking spent something like 350 hours translating into English. And then somebody took that and, you know, kind of pablamized it for me to make, you know, and then, but the insights are really wonderful that I wouldn't have picked up any more than without reading the commentaries of our acharyas would I understand Krishna's pastimes the way that our acharyas have disclosed what's there in his pastimes. So there's one devotee who has made a pledge every year to translate another kanda that includes Govindaraja's commentary in readable English instead of that difficult British English. You want to know his name?
What's the name of that devotee? So
Vidvan Gauranga. Vidvan Gauranga. And it's now available. It took some, somersaults and jumping through hoops, but now Amazon has the Balakanda in 3 parts available in America.
Okay.
And then the next kanda is still, it's only available in India, and the shipping costs more than the book does. But he's moving along.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Vidvan Garanga.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question, Maharaj. Is it okay to ask?
Just Kishkinda Kanda, I think it's 4 parts. No, Aranya Kanda is 4 parts. And they're thick. He's really immersed. Okay, so now your other question.
So, Maharaj, we are hearing when we hear the scripture, like glorification of scripture, we hear one chapter or one page or one line even, there's so much benefit.
Yeah.
So what's the qualification of reading this scripture?
What's the which?
What's the qualification to read this scripture? You have to be pure devotee, like?
No, to read you can be anybody. Just be a spirit soul. That's the quality. You're a spirit soul. And so, the more benefit comes, the more you're eager to receive. The inquisitive, jigyasu, inquisitive spirit, to understand that which is beyond our senses to reach. Through sound we can receive it. Like a kid is curious. I'm curious. I'm still a kid. Curious about things that are just of the transcendental realm that I'm never going to understand except through this hearing process. So be really careful what the sources are that you receive from, because it could be gobbledygook. So when you're careful what the source is, and the qualification is your eagerness.
Maharaj, but at the same time we hear these scriptures only Brahman or Kshatriya, they can read the scripture, not the Vaishya and Shudra.
Yeah,
How to understand that?
That's if you're in the... We're not abiding by that restriction. Keep it simple. The qualification is your spirit soul. And you receive mercy. Bhakti is not dependent upon varna or birth or anything material. Bhakti is dependent upon contact with bhakti. Be a spirit soul, and bhakti is awakened by contact with bhakti. So that's the qualification. And the varnashram considerations is not for those who are deeply invested in bhakti, a bhakti acharya who can give bhakti. It's not Vedic times, and it's not a Vedic principle. The Vedic principle is gradual elevation, and our principle is the elevator method. Okay, I'm going to end because
Thank you, Maharaj.
it's time
Thank
to
you.
end.
Hare Krishna.